Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie. Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today's topic is deciding when and if to resign a job, and if you do so, how to do it. My guest is Dr. Tom Denham from Careers in Transition. I want to thank you again for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great
Good to be here.
Great. Okay, resigning a job. But before we get into how to do it, I guess many people have experienced their spouse coming home and saying, "I quit my job." And it's not always a happy reaction that you get. Well, do you have a new one? Does that mean we sell, we move?
Right.
So let's talk
Sure.
a little bit about the process of thinking about quitting your job. What kind of things maybe you shouldn't quit over, and when you should.
Sure. You know, it's interesting because sometimes I have clients that are in danger of what I call rage quit, which means these little resentments that build up over time that they try to suppress, and then one day they go into the boss's office and they say, "I can't take it anymore," and they walk out. So I tell clients that I have this thing I've invented called the quit index. And the quit index is on a scale of 1 to 10. If 1 is, "This is my perfect job, I will never leave it," and 10 is, "I'm going to quit this afternoon," I tell my clients, you need to come see me when you're a 5 or 6. Not when you're a 9.5. Because in terms of career planning and career development, you don't want to be at that point where you simply can't take it anymore. So when we talk about resigning, you really have to write down or type out the advantages and disadvantages of resigning, and you really need to have a game plan about where you're going.
What kind of things do people generally, what builds up and what kind of things generally make them want to leave? Like, I would imagine a few things you would say, well, maybe that's not the kind of thing that you should be really quick to quit about, whereas other things could be very horrible.
Right. You know, people quit for a variety of reasons. They quit because they have a poor relationship with their boss, a poor relationship with their coworkers. Corporate culture may be dysfunctional. They don't like the job duties. They don't see any room for advancement. They're not appreciated or rewarded. Where they want to go is not in alignment with their core value, with where they are. Their core values are not in alignment with where that career is going. Could be salary, benefits, location, commuting, a whole host of reasons why people quit.
So it sounds like some of those wouldn't be a reason to say, "I quit today." I mean, you would really not just quit. You would have known that you had a long commute for quite a while.
It could wear on you. In any job, I wrote an article once called The 6 Stages of the Job Life Cycle. And it's interesting because anytime you get into a new job, you have this tendency to idealize it. This is great, I love the organization, the new challenges, my boss is great, the coworkers are great, I'm going to be making great money, the benefits and everything like that.
And I chose this job, so I'm brilliant, so it must be good.
This is a great fit for me. And then what happens is, over time, you hit peak performance, then you hit maintenance, and then you devalue it. And so
it sounds like the birth and death of a company.
Yes, it's really a relationship. And what you thought was wonderful in the beginning, after a while you devalue it, meaning you hate your boss, you hate the coworkers, you hate the corporate culture, you're not being paid enough, you're not advancing, you're not being promoted.
You're going through the whole thing.
So the relationship changes.
Okay. So before we move on, any advice? Let's kind of just chat about the advice a little bit. You're at a 5 or 6. Let's say you're at a 5 or 6. You're not at a 9. We have to talk them off the ledge here. Mm-hmm. How do you talk to this person?
Well, the first thing you should do is call a career counselor because you obviously have some problems. And as a career counselor, I want people to be as satisfied as possible with their job or career. Career satisfaction for me is if you've got a job where you're 80% satisfied, you got to put up with the other 20%. That would be a great situation. No job is 100% satisfying.
So deal with that. Don't let it wear on you. Don't let it build up with this 20%.
Right. I mean,
find some mechanism.
You have to focus on what's working right for me in this job and what other areas need improvement, but don't put all of your attention on the weaknesses. You also have to be in charge of your own career development. You have to be aware. You have to be the driver. So if you're starting to have these feelings, that's the time where you should go see a career counselor, have an annual checkup, update your resume, start talking about these things. Most people don't do that. They go in a job, and again, they idealize it, and then over time they devalue it. Then they're a 6, then they're a 7, then they're an 8, and they just keep saying, I'll just deal with it, I'll just deal with it, I'll just deal with it. 3 more years go, and now they're a 9.5, and they wonder how they got there. It's very much like if you take a frog and you put it into boiling water, it'll jump right out. But if you take a frog and you put it in lukewarm water and then turn up the temperature ever so slightly, it'll just boil itself. It'll never jump out.
That's what they say anyway.
That's the theory. Right? That's the theory.
Okay, so I guess we've covered the don't be impetuous part of the whole thing, and I know from talking to you a number of times, everything that you think about is planned.
It's deliberate. It's intentional. That's the way your career development should be. There are 3 types of jobs you should be looking at. One is your ideal job. The next job is your backup or realistic job, or what I call the good enough job. And the last one is the safety, survival, or the rock bottom job. You have to get clarity on what those jobs are, and you really have to manage your career. You have to ask yourself on an annual basis, a semi-annual basis, where am I going with my career? Is this really what I want? Where do I see myself in 5 years? If I stay in this job or this career, is that going to give me the satisfaction that I need so that when I get to the end of my career, I'll say, my career was successful.
Okay. So let's apply that now to the resignation.
Okay.
And I guess it could be a person who has planned everything out and has carefully found another job. It could be a person who's dealing with a lot of problems in the office and for that reason wants to leave. I don't know if there's a difference. We can look at those. But what's the first thing that you would tell somebody to do when they came in and they really, you decided, they decided after talking to you, whatever, I think resignation is time.
Let's just assume for a second that the person has talked to a career counselor, several people in their dream team, their spouse, close friends, mentors, advisors, and they have come to the conclusion after a very careful deliberation that they are going to resign. Right. So they've made this emotional commitment that they want to either do something else or they just want to basically get a divorce.
Right.
That's what they want. So the very first thing is you need to keep it private. It's not something that you would go on Facebook and say, I'm thinking about quitting my job. So I don't think there's
That's like shouting from the mountaintop.
Yeah, you really, there's no advantage to broadcasting this. Certainly not at this point. That can happen later on. You also need to think about what are the ramifications in terms of my benefits, my insurance. We have to, in this discussion, we have to decide whether we're talking about people who are in such toxic environments that they have to quit for health reasons, or people have to leave maybe for health reasons or not and have a job. So it's they either have a job or they don't have a job.
Okay, so that sounds like a healthy 2 options, 2 types of people.
And I have had clients this year who've resigned and who've had jobs, and then clients that have not had jobs. There is definitely that old adage, you should never quit your job before you have another job. I'd be very careful about the word never, because I did have a client this year. The work situation was so toxic. There was no support from below. There was no support from above. This person was getting dozens and dozens and dozens of email every day, simply could not keep up with them. Coming home, it was impacting the marriage. It was impacting his health. He had to go to his doctor. He started to get on medication, wasn't sleeping.
So it's not worth that.
I don't think it's worth it. I think your health is primary, and what I would like to say is the first wealth is health. And so I don't think any amount of money is worth it.
Right.
So in that situation, he resigned. He gave 2 weeks' notice and had no job. 3 weeks later, he found a job because he was a consummate networker, and he went to his LinkedIn.
Excellent.
And he found a job.
So good ending
yes,
on that one.
excellent ending. He's doing very well, much better.
Okay, so now
Wise decision.
We've got the hypotheticals. We can take that person first. What's the first thing they should do in organizing the resignation? Because we've already covered the networking and the other things.
So they've made this emotional commitment that they're going to resign. Now they need to write this letter of resignation. The interesting thing is when you write a letter of resignation, psychologically you start to check out. It can be a very healthy sort of thing. I mean, there are people who I've worked with that are so tired of their jobs, and I'll give them advice and say, why don't you just write your resignation letter, put it in an envelope, and just hold on to it. Just hold on to it. That will often help them start the ball rolling to move forward.
It could also scare them, I guess, and say,
it could scare them. It could, yes, it could help them go either way. But usually, if they're contemplating that and they write the resignation letter, not necessarily submit it, they're starting to move in another direction. You want to keep that resignation letter clear and concise and short. You do not want to go on and on and on.
For example, how would you? I guess, what are the major parts of a resignation letter?
Right. Well, I've written some notes on it, and again, in my article, 11 Steps for a Graceful Resignation, you can look at it in detail. You're writing to inform them that you're resigning, and then you state the position, and then you state an effective date. Now, typically, most employers want 2 weeks. Some want more than that.
And you would know that as an employee, pretty much.
Yes, you would. You would say, I've accepted this position at this company.
That makes it pretty final.
Yeah, yes, you're moving on. You want to be gracious and thank them. So you would say something like, I want to sincerely thank you for this opportunity to work with you over the last 5 years. I've learned so much from you, and I'm grateful for the skills I've developed here. Since I want to make this a smooth transition as possible, let's meet again to plan a course of action.
Okay.
So you're being cooperative in this. Again, thank you for what you've done for me. I want to wish everyone here and you the best for the future.
So you've really painted the atmosphere as we're all trying to do the best for ourselves and for the company, and everybody understands that people move on, and
that's right.
I'm really grateful that you were part of my life, kind of.
Right. That's right. So I don't think you need to write very much more than that.
Now, on that one,
just one
go
more
ahead.
thing. Avoid the temptation to vent.
Right.
There
was no venting in there.
Keep that to yourself.
Right.
Go home and vent.
It must be hard, though, sometimes to say how appreciative you are when, under your breath, you
want to pull out your weapons of mass destruction and take it
at
out on them?
least just tell them what you think of them.
Right, right. This is a small town. You don't want to burn any bridges.
And many times there's a network, so whether it's a small town or not.
That's right. Everyone is interconnected, more connected than you often think they are.
Right, and you never know what's
never
one or
know.
two connections away.
Right.
Could have been the new job.
Yeah, right, exactly. So perhaps some of the people at the new job know people at the old job too.
Right. Okay, now that person could have been either one. It could have been the one that had to leave, but it could have also been the one that, as you just described, that had another job. Now, if you didn't have another job, how would that letter be
So
different?
you might say, instead of saying I've accepted this position, I'm looking forward to new opportunities that are in alignment with my career goals and interests.
Nice. That sounds good.
You don't have to go into
not
a lot
lonely.
of, no. You don't have to say that I don't know what I want, but I have to leave. You don't have to say this job sucks and I have no idea what I want to do with my life or where I'm going. You're basically terminating the relationship. You're staying positive, though.
Okay. Now, it doesn't have to be real long, but it had those main parts.
Now, my little example here, it's one paragraph.
Okay.
Sincerely, Richard Naylor.
I'm fine.
No, you're good for now?
Yeah. Okay. You go in with the letter. You're going to hand it to the person?
You're going to set up a meeting with your supervisor when you have their undivided attention.
Right.
Okay. This is not something that you want to pass to them
through the secretary or through the mail.
That's exactly right. You want to have a one-on-one meeting when their time is not divided between the internet and meetings and that sort of thing. So this has got to be a private meeting. You're going to want to be tactful. I would never, ever resign by email. I think it's just very bad form. You're going to want to resist the temptation.
And you won't even know for sure if they got it.
They keep you on. And what I suggest that people do is that they resign on Friday so that people have the weekend to cool down. And again, you want to be gracious.
You're going to come in with the letter then. Now, for many people, they still may feel a little awkward. They're going to have to talk when they hand them this. Could you paint kind of a picture of how that might go? I mean,
there are several scenarios.
Okay, let's try it.
Okay, so you hand in your resignation letter
and run like
and
the wind.
They are enraged by this. How dare you?
I'd be shocked if that happened, but how would you deal with that? Wow.
Yeah, they are absolutely enraged. It happens all the time.
Wow.
It happens more than you think. I mean, this is the work that I do. I have had clients who they've said, pack up your things immediately and get out.
And is that part of the rage? It sounds
Right.
rather self-destructive, and maybe that's why they should have wanted to leave.
Well, again, imagine that you're getting a divorce. And you go to your spouse and say, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've accepted a position with this other person, and I would like to get a divorce. And the person says, get your stuff and get out of the house immediately. Okay, they throw you out.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Or another scenario is they say to you, you know, Tom, thank you so much for working here. We want to wish you all the best. We'd really appreciate it if you could give us 2 weeks to make this transition. It could be a very big shock to whoever's receiving the letter of resignation.
Depending on how critical you are.
Well, you're not going to be critical.
Well, I mean, they could be. You know?
No. When you're submitting your resignation letter and you're having that meeting, you're not going to be critical.
To the company?
No.
They don't need you that much?
No, you're not going to criticize the company or the supervisor.
I didn't mean it that way at all.
Okay.
I meant important to the company. You were an integral part of the company. You were the top salesman. You were you were the only one who understands the computer code.
Right. Well, here's another thing: is they may be in shock. They may be thinking to themselves immediately, "How does this impact me? How does this impact my department and other staff? I'm going to be down a staff person, somebody that's worked here for perhaps a long time, and how am I going to be able to cope because they know the codes and the inner workings?
Right.
This person is essential. And I wasn't expecting this, and I have too much on my plate already to be dealing with this.
Right.
So they may go into some kind of panic.
Okay.
So the next thing is they may give you a counteroffer. They may give you a counteroffer right then and there. They may say, before I accept this letter of resignation, I would like to talk to my superiors and propose a counteroffer. Would you be willing to entertain that?
Okay. Now, if you've already accepted a job somewhere else, but this counteroffer ended up being the answer to everything you wanted, maybe because it's a slight change in the job, how would you negotiate that at this point?
That's interesting because each person is different, so it really depends. I mean, if you're resigning because somebody else got a $1,000 increase and you didn't.
Maybe it shouldn't have been then.
Maybe it also depends on whether you have a job that you're going to or not. If you don't have a job and they come back and they throw more money to you, maybe that's going to satisfy you more.
At least keep it for a while.
Right. Typically, though, money tends to be a very short-term motivator. Usually there's other reasons why people resign. I've had clients that make 6 figures, and they tell me, if the company gave me $30,000 more, it still wouldn't make me happy. I want to get out of this line of work.
Right. Well,
now, a lot of people looking from the outside would say, suck it up. here's another $30,000. I would just love to be in that kind
And
of
I have
situation.
4 figures, so.
Right. And so it really depends on the person. So if somebody's making 6 figures and they're completely unhappy, somebody from the outside could look and say, suck it up, make it work. But that person doesn't live that other person's life.
Right.
They don't know how toxic it is.
Yeah, and I think we know that one of the main reasons why people leave, either they don't feel valued or they don't feel that they're being treated fairly.
Right.
So maybe they didn't think they were treated fairly because somebody else made more, even though they're doing more work. But all these things seem like maybe you should have been talking about that before you just threw down that piece of paper.
Or maybe you've had these conversations before and they just don't
They went
budge.
nowhere. So you should
or they just say no, or they
Right.
dismiss you, that type of thing.
Right.
If you've accepted another position at another company, it would be assumed that 9 times out of 10 that's a better place for you.
Right.
Could be more money, could be better responsibilities, could be a better boss, could be a better culture. It's unlikely that if they throw more money at you from the first company that you're going to stay with them. And then the question becomes, well, really, where do you want to be with that company? Just because they gave you a counteroffer, do you really want to be with them for another 5 years? The other thing is, it weakens the relationship.
Right.
Because now they know that you've left, you've been tempted to leave once, you may in fact leave again. So that relationship has to be repaired.
Okay. Okay, so we've got the letter. We've spoken about it.
We've resigned.
We've resigned.
We've accepted a position in another
we've been
company.
Polite.
And now it's time to tell your coworkers.
Okay.
So supervisor first, then you're going to tell your coworkers. You don't want your coworkers to find out about it through the internet or through an email or through somebody else.
So you really need to do that fairly quickly.
Right.
Now, have you had any problems of how that's done? Do you tell the people that you know the best, or?
Well, I would assume with your coworkers, you're working with these people pretty closely. So, you
no emails again?
No, I wouldn't. There are some things that are appropriate for email. And
yeah, it feels
not.
cold.
It does. Yeah. I mean, if you're working with these people on a regular basis, you want to give that personal touch, I think. So telling your coworkers, then notifying other people in the organization. And the 7th step is, again, be prepared. It should have been right, in terms of order here, it should have been right after the supervisor, because they may say, take your stuff and leave now. Either that's part of their rage, or that's just company policy. They may want you to stay on to help them with that transition.
What do you think, what is more common, or it sounds like you've had experiences where more bosses, if I can use that word, get upset than I would have thought. But do most people get upset, or do most people think, well, this is not the smartest thing for me. I think maybe we need to find somebody else to replace them, and we need to get training.
Some bosses are very understanding. They want the best for you. They want the best for your career development. If you don't want to be there, they don't want to have you there. But I've also had many clients who've had toxic bosses that don't understand and act like tyrants. And that's one of the reasons why they leave.
Now, you might feel bad because you realize that your coworkers really need some of the things that you have. You realize they don't know how to do this or that,
right?
And nobody else is going to be able to help them. They're going to struggle.
Right.
You may feel
you may feel very conscientious, and that's why you want to make the transition smooth. But in today's day and age, you have to be dedicated to your own career self-management. If this is not a place where you're going to have a healthy environment and you're not going to thrive and it's not going to help you grow, you got to go.
So that's the reality, and you'd like to help them, but if they don't,
they'll get over it.
They'll get.
They will get over it.
Through it.
They will get over it.
Right.
They will move on. It may take some time, but they will move on.
But if the boss says get out, you just go.
Okay. Have you been at the library your entire career?
No.
No. Okay. Where were you before this?
Before I had another library.
Okay.
And you have this conflict or that conflict with different people.
And I'm quite confident.
Then I had a lot of jobs before that.
I'm quite confident when you were leaving, everyone was in tears. Not exactly.
It's an interesting, I have to go back a long way. But
I'm sure some people were.
some people were.
But you know what? They got over it.
Right.
They got over it. They moved on.
And do you look back and see what happens to this company, or do you just...
That's one of the other points is, you want to be ethical, you want to say your goodbyes, and you want to move on. You don't want to take any kind of anger or baggage to the next employer. You need to either get some professional help or work through that. You want to make a clean break and a fresh start.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot here. What are we missing? Kind of...
People are not very methodical when it comes to this kind of thing, and that's why I wrote this article, is so that people have a step-by-step process of resigning gracefully. Most people, I've written a lot of articles for the Times Union and Albany.com, and career development is really a body of knowledge that most people don't understand, even though there's a lot of this on the internet, there are books. We're not taught how to resign.
Right. It's a little awkward.
Yeah. And so a lot of people just try to take this into their own hands. It can be an embarrassment. It can be something that you want to do in secret or private. But again, having that inner circle of people that can advise you on how to do it right, but also give you some emotional support. So when you leave the place and you get this divorce, you can feel supported and encouraged, because you spend more time at work than in any other aspect of your life. You're spending more time with these people than either sleeping or with your family. And so you have relationships with these people that are closer than some of your, family relationships.
Okay.
You spend more time here at this library than probably with some of your cousins.
Well, that's easy. Yeah.
Yes.
They live on the West Coast, so
there you go. You got geographical barrier.
Right.
And so, you want to get along with these people, and then they're no longer part of your life. Sometimes they're friends. Sometimes they stay with you. Most of them will not keep in touch with you, no matter how close you are.
So this process is fairly compact. Most of what probably happens takes place before that 2-week period. But let's talk about the 2-week period a little bit, because let's say, okay, the boss says, great, let's think about this, how you can best pass off the baton, and we can continue running, and you can also plan your next phase as well. But since you're willing to, and you still have 2 weeks you're working for us, let's make the most of them. What kind of dangers are there in that? What might go wrong? Any advice for the person for that 2 weeks?
Well, one of the things that will begin to happen is you may feel alienated. People will not treat you as part of the team. They will treat you as somebody that's checked out. You're in the lame duck mode.
Okay.
One of your goals is to either type out or write down the body of knowledge that you know, so that people know the policies and procedures that are so close to you, so that people are not lost. You don't want things to collapse after you leave. You don't want to leave a mess behind. Clean desk.
That's not great for your reputation.
No, you are. Your reputation is all you have. So you want to make sure that when you leave, people feel that it was a smooth transition, they know your job. You may even want to help them describe the type of person that they should hire. Sometimes people stay on until somebody's hired. Sometimes that person's part of the hiring process. Sometimes that person reviews resumes. Sometimes they will even do an overlap, where you're going to work. Yeah, you're going to work for a week with this person before the person retires.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like there are a lot of different situations.
A lot of different situations.
A person who is retiring and resigning, that's a much different situation than the person who doesn't have another job and really needs the income.
One scenario is you have that boss that's enraged by your resigning, and then says, pick up, and impulsively says, pick up your stuff, get the heck out of here right now. The problem with that is it's disrespectful, it's not appropriate. But what the boss doesn't understand is that the emotions got the better of him. And that now the person's gone.
Now they have to call him?
Yeah, now they have to
question?
call them and ask questions, or they don't feel comfortable asking questions.
Of course not.
And all that knowledge, that institutional knowledge, went out the door. He should have restrained
so
that
that's a good
impulse
point
or
for
her
bosses,
impulse.
too.
What's that?
That's a good point for the person
Absolutely.
who's losing the employee, too.
Right. And again, most bosses are not taught how to accept a graceful resignation and how to make that transition.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot. I think that's a lot of good advice.
I hope so. I hope people will read this article, learn
Now,
from
help
this.
us find that.
You just type into this thing called Google.
I've
It's
heard of
new
that.
on the internet. It's a great thing. 11 steps for a graceful resignation.
That's a
And
lot of
it
words.
will
so
tell
that
you a
should work.
step-by-step process.
Great.
And again, if you Google my name, Dr. Tom Denham, you'll find other articles on resumes, cover letters, interviewing, job search strategies that can help you.
Great. Thank you again. We've
Thank
got
you.
another chapter.
Yes. Look forward to the next show.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Dr. Tom. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you tune in again next week, and that you have a great week. Take care. Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.